Hi, welcome to the Denver Senior Resource Channel. I am Morgan. I'm the director of Maintain Me.
And hello, I'm Chelsea. I am the nurse and owner of Maintain Me.
Thank you, Chelsea. Today we are going to talk about how much does assisted living cost. And the first part of that cost is going to be rent. And much like rent in an apartment, rent is often paid based on what you're renting. Are you renting a studio? Are you renting a one bedroom? In assisted living, definitely the highest premium is going to be a 2-bedroom apartment. It carries the biggest footprint, so it takes up the most space, and just like a big home, it's going to have the highest price point. And so when we're looking at rent alone, you can expect maybe $3,200 a month or somewhere around there, maybe up to $3,800 a month, probably for a studio apartment. So this is not a 1-bedroom. A 1-bedroom average, you're probably looking at starting around $4,000 or somewhere in that area. And then the third type of rent could be, what if you're just renting a bedroom in a residential assisted living? So a home that's been remodeled to be an assisted living or built from the ground up to be assisted living, but it's 16 residents or less. That's a residential assisted living. And if you're just renting a bedroom, you'll have a bedroom maybe with a bathroom, and that carries a little higher premium. Perhaps it's cost prohibitive to have a private bedroom, so you'll have a companion suite. So that may be one very large bedroom with 2 residents that share it, and that's going to be the most cost effective of all the assisted livings when you're still looking at private pay. So,
hey, Morgan, real quick before you move on to that, can you talk about bathrooms actually? Because shared versus how many bathrooms can you get, and does that affect cost?
I think I understand your question. How many bathrooms per apartment?
Yeah, or in the residential space too.
2-bedroom, 2-bath. Oh, okay. In the residential space, so what we're seeing more and more in this very cost-effective care model is that you'll have a bedroom with a powder bath. So that's a sink and a toilet, and usually private. We're seeing that a lot more frequently, but there's no shower. And if you think about it, the shower, if it was part of the bedroom, would take up this big space. So your living space would be dedicated to a shower. And if you're in assisted living, you probably need at least a standby assist for your shower. So what the solution is to keep your space as big as possible, give you all the living space that you need. You need a big shower to be able to have that person in there to assist you. So now they'll have shower rooms. So that may be just outside the hall or just a little bit down from your bedroom. And then you have this big, you would obviously be in there with no other residents and just with your care partner. But oftentimes there's heat lamps and huge roll-in showers, and they're just quite like spas, actually. But that saves on the cost for your square footage of the bedroom that you rent. And then it also gives you the most efficiency for that bedroom that you're renting.
And then how many can you, when you're getting up to the 2-bedroom range, are there more than 1 bathroom? Can there be? I mean, obviously
Sure.
that affects the cost probably.
Yeah, absolutely. A 2-bedroom, 2-bath is definitely the highest premium. And at last check, I think the most affordable 2-bedroom, that was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but for 2 people was $7,200 and some change per month. And that did include basic care, that did include all the meals and activities, but you're looking at least $7,000 or more. And a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, you're going to be in the upwards of probably closer to $8,000, and that's probably not including care, but meals and housekeeping and rent, utilities generally. Great questions, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the rent. Chelsea, what happens or what's the next thing to consider and how much assisted livings cost?
Yeah, so the with Morgan covering the rent, what I think is kind of, you know, misunderstood is that it depends now on the care type, as far as how they do their how they bundle that, right? So we've talked about this in other videos, but just a quick reminder that there are 3 different types of payment models as far as care goes. That's all inclusive. So what that means is if it's an all-inclusive community, what Morgan says as far as a rent cost, that's it. There is no additional cost for care, all inclusive. That's literally the best situation you could be in. However, it is designated in certain types of communities. So you're going to see that more in the residential stuff. So that's going to be the most affordable. There is no additional cost outside of what Morgan had talked about. Then you're going to get into levels of care. And levels of care, there's a few questions you're going to ask. You're going to ask, okay, how many levels of care do you have? And what are the difference between them? Because some of them will have, you know, $200 between one level and the next, and some of them will have $1,000 between one level and the next. So you can see if there's 3 levels and only $200, that's a really affordable option. If it's 7 levels and $1,000 apart, that's $7,000 on top of the basic rent that she had already talked about that you could potentially be putting on top of that rent cost. So, and then we have a la carte. A la carte is unique in the fact that you're paying for what you get. So it's kind of weird. Some of them were like, oh, it's $300 a shower. And then some of them were like, oh, it's only a point a shower. And we're like, well, what's a point mean? So it definitely differs. That kind of gives you more of like a, you know, you check out at a register and whatever you get, you pay for. But if you, and then some of them are now bundling those in. So it gets a little convoluted and very confusing, which is why people are out there to help you break that down like ourselves. But regardless, one of the most important things to consider is, you know, okay, thank you for telling me the rent cost. Now, what is the care cost? Because they are separate, and people will advertise what their rent cost is. And then when people get in there, they're like, well, that's not what the advertisement said. But it's true. I mean, that is the rent cost. It is true. But they don't know what the care is that person is seeking. And so they will advertise rent alone sometimes. When care is very much so needed.
So Chelsea, let me ask you, if you're a person who only needs medication management, let's say, if you were supporting this family or this individual looking for assisted living because they need the meals and they can't keep up the house and those basic things, but then they need medication management, what type of community would you maybe suggest for this person?
That's a really good question. So I think it's important to understand that all inclusive is all care. So that sometimes can get a little bit more expensive than just a rent plus a medication cost. So there are different ways to do that. So there are 2 things that are sometimes broken out outside of just the basic rent or even just getting into the care stuff, and that's medication management and incontinence care. So there are some places that will say, okay, you need help with meds, but you don't really need care. And you know, you're going to pay this rent. So let's just pay $400 extra and we'll take care of your meds. And so it really just depends. Like if we're suspecting that person's going to need care and medication is just the start, that might be a different conversation. But if this is a pretty independent person outside of medication management, then we might look for something that has an affordable rent that also has a separate medication fee outside of actual care levels or things like that. So because then we're paying $400 versus maybe the base care level is $750, and that's including medication management and then a bunch of stuff we don't need. So I would definitely look for that. The other thing that is you just kind of triggered me on some of those questions, but second person fee. That's another one that if, say you have, I'm going to try not to make this long. Say you have a spouse who is really independent, and you have somebody who needs care, and you don't want to leave each other. I mean, right? I'm going to follow you there. I don't need help, but I want to be with you. There are things that they can add on top of, such as, you know, the second person fee. So those are another situation where, you know, maybe the other person's coming, but they might not even need everything. We're going to really look at, you know, what's the best way to get this done and keep it affordable, because our goal is to make this lasting and something that's sustainable. Morgan, talk a little bit about the community fee. What are the community fees in your area? Tell them what it is, because that's another thing that is attributing to cost.
Yeah, absolutely. So the majority of communities will have some sort of one-time non-refundable fee that's often referred to as a community fee. Sometimes this takes the form of a deposit, and Chelsea will get into that in a minute. But this community fee, as it comes from a community, could be, I've seen it be $500 all the way up to $25,000. So it very much depends on the community, just like the basic sedan all the way up to the luxury sedan, you're going to have a wide variety in there. But generally speaking, it's a one-time non-refundable fee that goes towards administrative costs. It can go towards keeping up the grounds. It can go towards turning the apartment for when one person moves out and the next person coming back in. So this is just a way for communities to recoup some of the money from just the onboarding process, if you will, from somebody moving in. And then also it supplements the money to make that apartment perfect again for the next person to move in, and then cover the costs of doing the paperwork. There's a fair amount of paperwork to sign a lease at an apartment. So that's a little bit about the community fee. And I touched on deposits. Deposits, are they different than a community fee, Chelsea? You want to take that?
Yeah, so sometimes they are. Sometimes what happens is, say I go with a family and they're like, oh, I'm gonna just bring me and my brother, and then we're gonna bring my mom and my dad when we've finally narrowed it down. And they go in, they love the apartment, and they're like, I want to hold this until I can get my mom in here. So maybe it's not like, maybe it can be called a deposit. It could be called a hold fee. It could be, and sometimes it's separate than the community fee. Sometimes people will say, you know what, pay the community or give me the community fee when you decide to move in. We'll go ahead and just run it. We'll hold your check or something. Other people are like, no, in order to put you on the list, because we are very high demand, we will have to accept at least $500. And then if you do move in, it will be applied towards the community fee. So do know that they sometimes are separate, and it's very specific to the place, and as well as the market. If they have a lot of space open, sometimes they'll be like, you know what, Chelsea, you brought a client to me. I trust that you're going to keep me updated. I'm not going to charge you guys a deposit. Just let me know by X amount of time. So that is one of the benefits of working with a local agent like ourselves, is that we have built those relationships and we can kind of tiptoe around some of those things. Because they know we're going to get back to them. They're not going to be wasting their time trying to get a hold of somebody when somebody else might want that same apartment. But just know that they are sometimes separate. So we talked about, community fee deposit.
You just made me think of something.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing that can also be a benefit of working with a local agent and having those relationships is sometimes the community fee could be a place where there's some wiggle room.
That's true.
We have a client who is on a very specific budget, and we're talking about a community fee, a second person fee, a deposit and a pet fee and a scooter fee, and all these things start to become overwhelming for this person to even get moved in. As you know, moving into a new apartment, that may be a place where your local agent can go to bat for you and say, do we have any wiggle room here? Because it's sort of an arbitrary thing that the community charges for their fees. This is a place where they could maybe give a break to the client, and we'll go to bat for you.
Yeah, I always tell families too, when you start seeing a bunch of communities take a bunch of discounts on care, I'm not sure that's always a good thing, but the administrative fee and the move-in fees and the things that, are in the beginning that could make it easier for somebody, that's a really great way for them to show them, hey, we want you here too, and we're willing to help you on those upfront costs. We don't ever want anything to be taken away from care or how they pay their employees so that you get the best of the best. And so taking rent costs away isn't always the best way to do that, whereas a community fee is a very acceptable way to help somebody through that transition. So again, there are partners that we work with that already just give us a flat discount for the fee just for working with us. They'll say, hey, for you, it's this much. I usually charge this much if it comes from external, because it's a lot more work than working with somebody who can help us through that process. Even on the community side, we do a lot with the community to help them through that they kind of discount for us. So that's a really good point. I heard you talk a lot about some like extra fee, right? So especially with that specific client that you were just talking about, let's talk about that, because, you know, when you're getting sold to as a family, it's not that they aren't going to tell you all these things. It's going to come up in the paperwork, but at what point are they telling you these things?
Yeah.
Is, I think, kind of important. And we really believe in transparency. We want to make sure this is a sustainable thing financially. And so we gather that stuff up front. So let's just shoot back. You said like a scooter fee, things like that. So I know some of the ones that I typically see all the time are pets. You know, most of the time it's a very low deposit and then a monthly fee, if anything. Some people don't even do the monthly, they just do the deposit, and it's treated just like an apartment deposit. I've seen garages, obviously, for included into rent for extra fees, pendants, the little fall pendants. What else? What else we have up there?
Like an emergency alert system, you mean? For
Yep, the little, yeah, emergency alert pendants for falls and things like that. Sometimes you'll have a monthly maintenance fee or something. It's rented, right? It's a rented thing. It's not owned. Oh, what about some of the personal care hygiene stuff? What about those, Morgan?
Yeah, so more and more we see salons inside of assisted livings, which makes a ton of sense, because if you need a haircut, it's a lot easier to go down the hall versus getting in a car and driving or being picked up, and it increases independence. I want a haircut. I'm going to go to the salon. So you just march on down there. But usually it's a rented space from a professional beautician or stylist, and they will have their own fee schedule. So you'll pay $30 for your haircut, but that also means there could be manicures, pedicures, color, everything. And then that leads me into another, mentioning manicures and pedicures. So foot care for older adults, an assisted living cannot cut toenails. They can't do it. It needs to be a trained foot care nurse, because they're looking for things like diabetic ulcers. Our feet are very important and they need special care, and the special care needs to be a nurse that comes into the community. And a lot of times this is covered by insurance because it's a medical procedure, but a lot of times it isn't. And so you just pay a flat fee of, say, $30 the day the foot care nurse comes in. So haircuts is the first one I mentioned, and then the foot care nurse. Oftentimes there's dentistry, but usually that's also covered.
Yeah, to speak on that, just to give you an idea, she talked about $30 for that foot care. The smaller the place, and when you have less people, sometimes you'll see that increase up to $45. When I owned my own residential assisted, it was really hard to find somebody that would go to the smaller communities. We were able to do that, but sometimes it is a little bit higher of a cost than when you're seeing a bunch of different people, and they can, suspect that they're going to see a certain amount of things. So that does increase. So I would ask those things. Again, those are all things that we get for you so that we can budget that into part of that financial planning that we do. So if you, ask, what are all the hidden fees? Because they're not really hidden. They're just, they haven't been established yet on what your needs are. And so until that happens, they might not come out right away. And so it's important to tack that into the financial cost of assisted living. So I think that's all I really had. This is a lot of information. We know when we do a medical, financial, social assessment, these are included in the financial assessment, minimum cost to maximum cost, and how long can we do that for? And, what type of setting do I need based off of what cost or how do I say this? How they handle costs and levels of care and things like that. Where do I need to go and what best suits me? So it's a lot of information, but it's important to know those things and incorporating that into what the cost is for assisted living. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit a like button, comment. If we missed something or you have questions about costs for assisted living, write it in the comments below. We'll respond right back to you. Thank you so much for being here. We would love to see you join more of our videos. We cover a lot of material and we are here to educate and create informed consumers. So thank you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Signing off.